after weeks of speculation, and all the pieces were there. We knew this was coming unless the Raiders screwed it up. And to their credit, they didn't screw it up. The fact that they screwed up their relationship with Maxx Crosby, more on that later, forced them to trade him. That was one of the talking points at the Combine. We had reported the Raiders were looking for 2 first-round picks and a player for Maxx Crosby. Ultimately, they didn't get that. But, sometimes you set the bar here and you hope you get here. They get 2 first-round picks from the Ravens under a deal that won't be official until Wednesday at 4 o'clock Eastern. That's when both the Raiders and the Ravens, they got to insert the key. They got to turn it. And once they do, and it really does work like that, each team independently has to communicate the terms of the deal to the league office. The terms have to match. And if they do, the deal is done. And the caveat here is either team can back out if they want to. And there's no penalty. The league won't look, well, they may be pissed off, but they won't say they violated any rules because these trades aren't done until they're done. We've seen that happen before, mainly at the trade deadline. Remember when the Bengals were going to trade A.J. McCarron to the Browns, I think it was, and it all fell apart right before the trade deadline. The terms didn't match, or the email didn't go through, or whatever it was. And there will be hard feelings. I remember a time when the Ravens and the Bears were trying to finalize a trade during the draft, and it didn't get done. That's happened multiple times. So it's not done until it's done. Now, some people may be pissed off, obviously, if it doesn't happen, but it's not official until Wednesday, the 11th of March at 4 p.m., and both teams communicate the identical terms to the league office. Okay, so let's assume it's going to happen. Let's assume that the 99.99% holds. The Raiders get the 14th overall pick in this year's draft from Baltimore, and they get wherever the Ravens land next year, somewhere between 1 and 32. Who knows? That's part of the mystery of acquiring the next year's first-round pick. It worked out well for the Bears a few years ago. They got Carolina's first-round pick in 24 as part of the trade package that allowed Carolina to get Bryce Young with the first overall pick in 23, and lo and behold, what did it give the Bears? Because the Panthers were horrible in 2023, gave the Bears the ability to get Caleb Williams with the first overall pick in 2024. So I think history tells us the Ravens are probably going to be a lot closer to the bottom than the top, but who knows? Got a new head coach, got a lot of transition. Who knows? Either way, the Raiders know they get the 14th pick this year to go along with the first pick that they earned the old-fashioned way. They stunk in 2025. And obviously, the fact that they have the first overall pick proves they did. They were the worst team in the league, and more on that later as well. So, I don't know who all else was in this. The betting odds, I don't know how instructive they are. The Bears were the favorites, and it started to slip a little bit as the week went on away from the Bears. The second alternative was the Raiders, and again, unless the Raiders screwed this up, he wasn't going to stay with the Raiders because he wanted out. Michael Silver's article from earlier in the week was a nice summary of where everything was and why Maxx Crosby was handling it the way he was. Unlike Myles Garrett a year ago, who made a Super Bowl week media tour explaining why he wanted out of Cleveland in very cogent and persuasive and reasonable terms. Obviously, the Browns just threw a bunch of money at him and got him to change his mind. Crosby never said it. He didn't have to say it directly. The key in all this was Jay Glazer. And it's amazing how many people didn't want to take what Glazer said during Super Bowl week this year seriously. We got to go back to the Sunday morning late in the regular season when Glazer was on Fox talking about his conversation with Maxx Crosby after Crosby had been told that he wasn't going to play the last 2 weeks of the season due to a knee injury he'd been playing with for weeks. He didn't react well to that. He wants to play football. And Glazer had little bits and pieces to illustrate that Crosby was upset, and he went right up to the line of saying Crosby wants out, and he didn't say it. He raised it as a question along the lines of, you got to wonder what happens next, or words to that effect. So we fast forward a few weeks, and Glazer at the Super Bowl says that Crosby's done with the Raiders. Once he says that, it's over. It's over. Unless the Raiders are completely and totally dysfunctional and are willing to say to Maxx Crosby, play for us or play for no one, dig in their heels and refuse to trade him, the deal's happening. When Glazer said that, I ran it by someone in a position to know Crosby's mindset, and I was told to draw my own conclusions, and I did. And then more reports started to trickle out after that. Crosby had directly told Tom Brady he's never playing for the Raiders again. Crosby does the podcast with Caleb Williams that fueled the speculation he'd like to go to the Bears. But Crosby never came out and said it. And this is the way Silver explained it. Crosby didn't want to alienate the Raiders fans. He loves the Raiders fans. It's not about the Raiders fans. It's about the way the Raiders handled him after Crosby was loyal to a fault to the Raiders organization throughout his entire career, a career that resulted in one playoff berth, and not because of him, because of everything around him. And this was one of the vibes I got late in the season before the Raiders fired Pete Carroll. It was one of the reasons why the Raiders had to move on from Pete Carroll, and they had to make other changes. You had two great players on the team last year, Maxx Crosby and Brock Bowers. And there was a very real risk that absent clear evidence of change, of an effort to get better, of steps that would lead to more wins, Crosby and Bowers could want to go. And who knows what Bowers thinks of Crosby being traded. Maybe Bowers thinks that he can get out too. Think of what Bowers could do with a great quarterback. He had a record-setting rookie season in 2024 without a high-end quarterback. So we'll see how the ripple effects of Crosby getting his wish affects the other great player on the team, the only great player left on the team. Now, Ashton Jenney could be great if they get the blocking to allow him to do what he did at Boise State, but we'll see. But they have ammunition to get two great players now in round one. Pick 1, pick 14. What they do with it remains to be seen. Do they trade down at 14 for more picks? They're presumably going to take Fernando Mendoza with the first overall pick, especially now that it's clear if they don't work out some sort of a trade for Geno Smith in the coming days, they're going to cut him before another $8 million in salary becomes guaranteed later this week. Right now, the price tag for 15 games with Geno Smith is a third-round pick and $58.5 million, less whatever he makes this year, as to the $18.5 million fully guaranteed for 2026. Set that aside. They paid him $40 million last year. They gave up a third-round pick to the Seahawks. They got 2 wins in 15 starts from Geno Smith, and I don't blame Geno for that. I think that the Raiders got swept away in this idea that they were going to be competitive last year. And I mean, maybe in another division, but just the fact that they were dealing with the Broncos, the Chiefs, and the Chargers, that's enough to say, whoa, Pete, let's calm down here. And what's amazing is they won their first game at the team that eventually went to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. But after that, it didn't work out. So Crosby goes with an asterisk to Baltimore if the two keys are turned at 4 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.